Hi folks, Harry Frank from Gray Machine here. Today we're going to learn how to do this reverse shatter effect. The shatter effect is not actually going to be using the Shatter plugin, but we're going to make this from individual pieces using Adobe Illustrator and some expressions in After Effects. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to jump over to Adobe Illustrator first to create our text document. Now, let's go into File New. I'll create my Shatter text document here. If we go into the profiles, we'll find a video and film section, and from the presets here you'll see a similar set of presets that you'll find in After Effects. I'm going to use HD TV 720, and this will come through when we import this document into After Effects as a 720p comp. So let's hit OK. We'll go to the text tool and type out our text. I'll just type out the word Gray Machine and make this a lot bigger. Now for the type here, for the typeface, I'm going to use something called slant. If you Google this or use your favorite search engine, you should be able to easily find slant on your favorite font downloading site. I am going to go in here and turn this section up just a little bit. Now, the reason we're using Adobe Illustrator for this is it has a very convenient set of tools that allow us to sort of break apart elements and break them into layers that we can use in After Effects. This would actually be very tedious in After Effects to break apart elements, sort of masking them individually and adjusting anchor points to center them up. It would be a little bit easier in Photoshop, but it's actually super easy in Illustrator. So first we need to change this from editable type to more of a set of vector data, you know, points and lines and all that define this image rather than some editable type. So we need to go up to type and select create outlines. This is sort of what happens when you do use freely distributed fonts. The vectors weren't really cleanly put together. You can see gaps and pieces here. I'm going to go to the Pathfinder, which if you don't see that, just go to Window and select Pathfinder. And click on the shape mode right here, which says Add to Shape Mode. I should say Option, click on it. So hold on the Option or Alt key in Windows when you click the Add to Shape Area button here, and it should clean that all up for you. So next we're going to use the knife tool. The knife tool is just sort of a tool that allows us to cut, hack, and slash our image or our vector data into individual pieces. And every time I do this, if I twirl this open, we can see it's creating new paths made of these individual pieces. This allows us some flexibility in terms of how we want this to shatter. Like we can have, you know, pieces more on the corners or whichever way you want to do it. The other cool thing about this is that it doesn't really matter which way we go. When it breaks these into pieces, it creates them somehow sort of in order from left to right. So I can just kind of go through and slash this up, make lots of individual pieces. Keep in mind, the more pieces you make, the more layers you're going to end up with in Adobe After Effects. So it's up to you. I tend to end up with about 200 layers or so when I do this little shatter animation. So we've got our individual pieces, and what we need to do is turn these into layers that we can import into After Effects. So we can select this, and actually this is all grouped right now. I'm going to right click, select ungroup. So we've got all the individual paths inside one layer. If I go up to this pop-up menu right here, and I just left click, I can select Release to Layers Sequence. You don't want Release to Layers Build. What this is going to do is put layer, it's going to put the first layer in one layer, and then it's going to put 2 layers in the second layer, 3 in the third. It's sort of meant for what I gather more of a traditional animation kind of thing. But this will put one piece in each layer, and that's exactly what we want. Release to Layers Sequence. So now we have 194 layers, and it's selected this last layer. Leave this layer selected for now. Let's scroll all the way up to the top. Hold down the Shift key and select this first layer. Ugh, and it didn't do it. Either way, or start from the top, hold down the shift key, and go all the way to the bottom. We need to select all of these layers because even though they are layers, they're still under this first layer. They're organized in this first layer. So if we import this right now, it's still not going to see the individual layers. So I need to take these layers and drag them right out of this layer. Now we've got lots of individual layers, and actually we have an extra layer down here where they are all grouped under. And we can just trash this. This is just a blank layer. So we have 193 altogether. So let's save this and import this into After Effects. Okay, so back in Adobe After Effects, let's go to File, Import, and select the Shatter text. I'm just going to hit OK. We want to import this as a composition, and we want the footage dimensions to be the size of the layer. So make sure to select the layer size. So hit OK. Now there are a lot of layers on this, almost 200, so this is just going to take a second to import. And after a little bit of patience, we have all of our layers imported and placed in a folder here. And then we have a composition that is 1280 by 720 or 720p. And all of our layers are placed into the comp exactly where they need to go. This will take just a second to render here. So we have all these individual layers placed exactly where they need to be. Now, if we look closely, we can see these pieces sort of coming together, and we can see the edges where the pieces are. What's going on here is that each of these individual layers is anti-aliased. So let's take a look at one of these. Let's solo it and look at it as an alpha channel. Let's zoom in here. There it is. So the edges are anti-alias, so they're a little bit feathered out, and there's some semi-transparency as it goes from the inside of the layer to the edge of the layer. So as two of these come together, let's find two of them that are adjacent, both of these layers have some semi-transparency. So as they come together, there's a little bit of semi-transparent overlap going on, and we're ending up with a semi-transparent area in between them. However, if we select these two layers, or actually we're going to select all of them, but for right now we'll just select both of them. If we select the blending mode called Alpha Add, as one layer renders on top of another, the Alpha Add blending mode will take the alpha channels and add them together. And that's exactly what we want to do for all of these. So I'm going to hit Command A or Control A in Windows and select all of them. Go down to Alpha Add in the blending modes. If you don't see your blending modes, make sure you either toggle your switches on, or you can right click and go to modes right here in your columns. So let's unsolo these layers, jump back to RGB view, and zoom out a little bit. So let's turn transparency back on. So this will minimize the effects of those overlapping layers and make things look a lot cleaner. Next thing we need to do, let's go back to our switches, select all again, and make these all 3D layers, because we're going to need to do that eventually. So let's just do it right now. So the idea of this shatter is to control each of these individual elements. This is sort of like a particle system. However, in this case, we're manually controlling each one of these pieces. So rather than animate this manually with keyframes, which could get very tedious, we're going to use some random expressions to control where these things start, and then we'll use a linear and ease function actually, and control how these move from a random spot to their final resting place. So let's just take a look at one layer right here. We've got this piece over here on the E, and I'm going to hit P to show the position, and we're going to create an expression. The basic concept here, before I go into much detail, let's just outline exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to create variables called start and end. Don't even worry about what those are going to be. Just know that there's going to be starting point and an ending point, and we want the expression to control its position. We'll have it start in one position, and we'll have it end in another position. the way we control the position and interpret from start to end is using something called linear. Technically, we're not actually going to use linear, but we're going to use something very similar, but linear is a good way to start out. So let me type this out real quick, and then I'll tell you exactly what's going on here. Linear is a little bit tricky to wrap your head around because, well, first off, it has all these values and commas and all that kind of stuff. And at a glance, it's really hard to tell what's going on. So when I was learning how to use this, I kind of got in a habit of actually saying, as I typed it out, what was going on. And I guess to this day, I still kind of do the same thing. I have a habit. So linear, this whole thing is going to output a series of values. It's going to output values at the rate of time. As time changes from 0 to 5, it will output values from start to end. Sort of like a range mapper or a way to sort of adapt these values, 0 to 5, to the values of start and end at the rate of time. So that's why I always say, at the rate of time from 0 to 5, it will output values from start to end. So we need to just define what these start and end values are. Now also, keep in mind, position is an array value. It has more than one value that defines what it is. It has X, Y, and Z. So we need to have a starting array, something that has X, Y, and Z, as well as an ending array that is X, Y, and Z. Getting a little complicated? Not really. Don't worry about it. This will make sense. So let's put some basic values in here right now. We need to format an array starting with a left bracket, and I'll just put some very simple values in here. 0, 0, 0, and a right bracket. And let's put a semicolon. The ending value will be 100, comma, 100, comma, 100. Ending, and then end with a semicolon. We always have to put a semicolon when we declare a variable. Well, you don't have to, but it's a good habit to get into because sometimes you will get errors and you just kind of need it there, and it's a good habit to get into. So what's going to happen right now with layer 1, well, the first layer is called layer 2. So layer 2, over the course of 0 seconds to 5 seconds, is going to move from 0, which is up here in the upper left, to 100 and 100. So it's going to move from 0 to 100 over the course of 5 seconds. If I change this to 6 seconds, it's going to move over the course of 6 seconds. Pretty simple. Now this ending value, we already actually have the ending value. Where it is, its default value is its ending position. So we've already established where it needs to end. Its value is where it needs to end. So its ending value is just going to be value, or I could also just type position. Position is going to be its existing value, but I tend to use the word value. So over the course of 6 seconds now, it's going to start from 0 up in the upper left to its final spot where it needs to go in the final artwork. Pretty cool. So if I did this for all of them, they would all move from that 0, 0, 0 point to their final ending place. And actually, let me show you how that looks. So let's select the position, go up to Edit, and select Copy Expression Only. You do not want to select Copy. Copy is going to copy the position numbers, or the position values, on top of the expression. We don't want that. We just want the expression, because all of these layers have different position values of where they're supposed to be. They're all a little bit different, but we have a lot of pieces, and there's a lot of subtle differences in where they're supposed to be, and we don't want to change that. They're exactly where they're supposed to be. So let's select all and paste what we've copied. Oops, I guess I didn't copy it yet. Copy expression only, and select all and paste. Takes a second. Now all of these layers have an expression that will push it from 0, 0, 0 on the upper left to their final spot at 6 seconds. We're getting there. Not very exciting just yet, but we need to add some randomness to this to make it a lot more exciting. Okay, so let's go back to this first layer and solo this. So we need to have the starting value be a set of random values, not just 0, 0, 0 for each layer. So we're going to do this by typing the word random, and in parentheses we can define a range of values to generate a random value from. So a simple example of this would be 0 and 10, so separated by a comma. This will generate one random value between 0 and 10. Now, this isn't going to quite be adequate because we do need 3 different values. We need an x, y, and z value. And this is only generating one value between 0 and 10. Instead of using 0 and 10, I'm going to use a 3-value array here as a starting number and a 3-value array as an ending number, as a range to generate random numbers. So we'll generate a random number somewhere between, again, I'm going to type a left bracket. This is how arrays are formatted. So let's just, we'll change these values, but just for demonstration purposes, let me type 100, comma, 100, comma, 100. A right bracket. Then we do have our comma in here. And then for the upper range of the random value, let's say this is 1000, comma, 1000, comma, 1000. And then end with a right bracket. And I got to put that semicolon at the end. So start is going to be equal to a random number with values for x, y, and z somewhere between 100 and 1000 for each of the values. This is actually going to generate a random value for each component of the array. So x, y, and z are going to have different values. So this isn't going to be, 500, 500, 500 or whatever. This is going to be somewhere random between, it could be 200, 300, 800. Each of these values are going to be different. So right now its starting value is 529, 550, and 832. Each of the values has been chosen randomly, and then, well, it's going to jump all over the place and then move to its ending spot. So what's going on is that random values, unless we tell them otherwise, are generated randomly on every single frame when we play this back or when we render it. So we need to tell it to basically stop jumping around like that. We have to tell it that we want one random value and we would like it to hold that random value for the duration of the composition. So I need to bump this line down one. I just hit the return key. And I need to type one more thing up here. I need to type seed random. Now, seed random allows us to generate a sort of a random number list or sort of a predefined list of random numbers. Computers don't really generate random numbers. They go through predefined lists or algorithms of randomness. Even though we can have what seems like a random set of numbers, it's very possible to actually have a duplicate layer running the exact same set of random numbers. So random seeds are, you'll find them in a number of things like particle generators and fractal noise and that kind of thing, where things are generated randomly. And it allows us to generate a different set of random values. This is the random seed, or in expressions this is called seed random with a capital R. So in parentheses we can put a number, and this is the random seed that this list will use. So random seed of 3 will be a different set of values than random seed 4. Now, why are we going through this? Well, if we type a comma, there's one more piece of the puzzle here that we can use. And this is called the timeless value. Timeless can either be true, spelled correctly, or it can be false. And we just type the words true or false. It defaults to false. False means it's not timeless, which means it will generate a random number on every frame. If we type the word true, this will hold the value. The random value will be timeless, and therefore it will only generate one random number and stick with that random number, not jump all over the place. Now I'm using our seed random of 4. I just have a habit of, instead of using a number value for this, if I have to use seed random, I tend to just use the word index in here. Index is equal to the number of the layer. So in this case, index is going to be equal to 1. So we'll definitely have a random random value that does not repeat for any other layer if I use this expression in every layer. It's not going to be that big of a deal here. It's just one of those things that I do kind of out of habit. So we're starting at a random place between 100, 100, 100, and 1000, 1000, 1000, and it's going to move from that random spot into its final resting place. Now, getting the random values exactly the way you want them to look really kind of depends on the look that you want as well as the resolution of the composition that you're in, because this is defined in pixels. So we've got our 0 point in X over here, but 0 in the Y is up at the top. So do we want them sort of clustered in the center, or do you want them spread out all over the place? I tend to use a look that kind of looks something like this. I'm gonna set the minimum range. So in the X-axis, how far of a range are we going to have? So I want it to start maybe just a little bit left of 0. So I'm going to say this is negative, we'll just call it negative 100. Now in the Y-axis, I want them to kind of be clustered in the center here. So it's going to start somewhere down here. So 0 is up at the top, so halfway point is going to be about 360, sorry. So let's say it could start anywhere from 200 and all the way down to maybe 400 or 500. Let's try 400. 400. So the Y randomness will be somewhere between 200 and 400. And then the Z value, we want it to be pretty far. So let's say a negative 2000 behind us, or as far as 1000 in front of us. Okay, so let's go up to copy expression only, select all, and paste. A way to sort of get around this copy and paste is if you've seen my tutorial on using external documents, you could just have all of these layers referencing an external document and just edit the expression in there, but I'm not going to get into that today. But it's another technique you could use the external document for. Okay, so they all kind of start in a little bit of a random spot, and then they swoop in and assemble. Now, what we've got right now is very similar to just using the shatter effect in After Effects. So you're like, well, why did we go through all this trouble if it pretty much kind of sort of looks just like the shatter effect? Well, because we are using individual pieces and we do have detailed control over each layer, we can get a little more specific with this. Right now, these are all going from 0 to 6 seconds. So they're all landing at the same time. What we can't do with Shatter very easily, or with much control, is sort of delay each one a little bit in time. So it's going to swoop in and assemble from left to right or right to left, depending on how we want it to assemble. So instead of having a fixed end value of 6 seconds, I'm actually going to change this back to 5. I'm going to have this be an ending value of 5 plus, in parentheses, I'm going to type index. Again, remember, index is equal to the number of the current layer times, using an asterisk, this comp period frame duration, capital D. So I'm adding on top of this 5 seconds this value right here. So this whole thing right here is our ending value. So 5 plus index times this comp frame duration. What this is doing is saying index, which in this case is equal to 1, times this comp frame duration. This comp frame duration is the duration of time it takes for one frame to happen. So in my case, this is about 1/30th of a second. So this is 5 plus 1 times 1/30th of a second. So that is 5 and 1/30th of a second. On the second layer, this would be 2/30ths of a second. Third layer would be 3/30ths of a second. So each of these is going to add 1 frame to its landing place. So it's going to make these stagger in 1 frame at a time automatically, using the same expression on each layer. Pretty cool. So let's go up to copy expression only, select all one more time, and paste that in. through this. You'll notice it's assembling, and it's actually assembling from the right side, which I'll show you an easy way to fix that. But so now they are staggering in one piece at a time. And remember how I mentioned somehow Illustrator is actually pretty smart about putting all these layers in the correct order. Notice I didn't have to switch anything around. As it broke the layers up, it assembled those individual pieces in the order that we need them to be for this exact animation to work, which is pretty cool. Now, what if we want this to go the other way? Right now it's going from the right side to the left side. Now we could do all kinds of expression craziness to fix this, but there's actually a very easy way to fix this right in our comp window, because this is going in order from top to bottom. After Effects will copy and paste in the order that we copy and paste in. So if I start at the bottom, I select this layer first, go all the way to the top here, hold down the Shift key, and select the top layer. I've selected all the layers in between. I'm going to hit Cut, Command or Control X, and paste. So it pasted that bottom layer first because I selected it first. Now if I go in, it is going to assemble these layers from left to right. Very cool. Now we need to backtrack with this expression just a little bit. Now I described this using a linear function because that's a very easy way to understand it. This line here will output a linear relationship at the rate of time from this value to that value using a range of this value to that value. Makes perfect sense. So it's a linear relationship. However, what's going to happen is this is also going to create a linear sense of movement for position. So it's going to move from 0 to about 5 seconds using these values. And it's going to come to an abrupt stop because it's using a linear relationship. There's actually a few other options we have instead of using linear that work exactly the same way, but don't output values in a linear relationship. And one is to use ease. There's also ease in and ease out that ease, well, in and out of the values. I'm simply going to use ease. So instead of using linear, let's use ease. Just swap out the word linear for ease, and this will look a lot better. And this is also going to allow us to add some automated rotation that'll look pretty good. So again, we need to go up and select copy expression only, select all, paste. I do know the quick keys for paste. I don't know why I keep going up to the menu there. But now we have a linear relationship, or we have an eased relationship. So it eases out of one value and eases into the ending value. So this is going to look a lot better and smoother. Now, we don't have any rotation going on for these layers just yet. What we need to do, well, there's actually a couple different ways we can do this. So just hit Shift R to show your rotation and orientation values. I'm going to create expressions for X, Y, and Z rotation. And like I said, there's a couple ways to do this. So the first way that I would do this is create an expression for rotation. Now we want it to rotate only when this stuff is going on up here. So we could copy and paste and do something, similar to that and create, random values and all that. But there's an easier way to do this. What we want to have happen is that as this moves, we want rotation to happen. And when it stops moving, we want the rotation to return to 0. So the way we can do this is to look at the speed of the position changing in time. So the pixels per second, that position is changing in time. This is the speed of the position property. If you want more information on this, you can go to videocopilot.net. Andrew Kramer did a pretty good tutorial on controlling particle emission with the speed function. I've been using speed mostly to control things like wiggle and rotation. To get a good rundown and actually a very clever use of it, I would check out the speed particles, I believe it's called. We're going to do something similar here. I'm just going to use the speed of this layer as it moves, so the position speed, to control the rotation. So I'm going to pick whip the position. Now After Effects is going to step in and try to help out and add an extra 0 in here because we're trying to mix and match values that don't quite line up. Position is 3 values and a rotation is 1 value in degrees. It's called a scalar value. So 1 value, not 3 values. So it's trying to help out and say, hey, you just want 1 value, but we don't want that. So we just want the speed, or how many pixels per second the position is changing over time. And in fact, we don't even need this word transform. It's kind of redundant. So position.speed of the layer, this is going to have the X rotation change as it moves. And then as it comes to a stop, it will come to 0. So that's kind of one way to do it. Expanding on that, maybe another way to do this would be to use wiggle in combination with speed. So let's just call this n. Let's say n is equal to the position speed. I got an extra space there. And if we go down here, we can type wiggle, and the frequency and amplitude inside here are the numbers we want to control. So if I just put 1 and 10, if you've never used wiggle before, just so you know, if I type wiggle 1, 10, this will have the X rotation change in sort of a random fashion as far as 10 degrees in any direction 1 time per second. So instead of making this 10, I can make this a value of n. So as this speed comes to a stop, so will the random variation. And actually, I've got this 1 time per second. So let's bump it up to 3, and this might speed things along, give it a little bit more rotation. There we go. So maybe let's meet in the middle here, 2, and then instead of making this n, we'll just make it n divided by 2. So I'm going to copy this and paste this for each of these, x, y, and z. And we'll see it kind of wobbling around like that. That is one way. Honestly, I would prefer to just use the position and speed, just like that. But I did want to show you 2 different ways. Pick the one you want, play with the values, and make it your own. So I'm going to use position and speed for each of these. So as it comes to a stop, that rotation is going to straighten itself right back up to 0. The other thing is if we didn't use ease and we used linear, this would come to an abrupt stop, as well as the rotation would also just snap from a higher value right to 0, and that just wouldn't look very good. So let's use the x, y, and z rotation expressions. Let's say copy expression only, select all, and paste. Unsolo the layer. Twirl that closed. Now, next, let's start wrapping this up and putting some finishing touches on this, like background, some lighting effects, and whatnot. Now, first, let's take note that I created this as a black document. Now, I'm going to select one of these layers, hit Command E or Control E in Windows, so we can edit this back in Illustrator. I want to select all these layers, go into the fill color, and do something I should have done from the beginning, which is make this kind of a dark gray. The reason we want to do this is a 0 black document in After Effects is really not going to show any light effects, any specular or metal or any shininess properties. So we make this just a little bit of a dark gray, and hit save. Jump back into After Effects. Now, because I've only edited this one file, this isn't exactly going to update for all of these by default. So if you don't see all of your layers update, just go to Edit, Purge All, and all of your layers should reload the new dark gray version. So next what I'm going to do is simplify things a little bit. Let's just drop this shatter text into a new comp, and I'm going to call this shatter text main. I'm going to import a image here. I've just got a couple images to choose from, the rusty wall or another wall texture that I've got. Let's try the wall texture. Throw that in the background. Make that a 3D layer. And I'm also going to select this one and collapse it and make that 3D as well. And add a new camera. So now that this composition is collapsed, this will sort of behave as if all those layers are still here, but I don't need a composition with 200 layers. I just have this one. So it's like all those layers are here, but I don't need to deal with them. I've just got them grouped in sort of one composition. So if I zoom out, you can see that those layers are still out there. However, this wall texture needs to be sized up. So I'm going to create a new light, layer new light. Let's use a point light and maybe something mostly white with just a hint of blue in there. So next what I'm going to do, because I'd like to use a very bright light to sort of make these things have some sharp highlight reflection kind of looking things, I'm going to need a pretty intense light. So if I twirl this open, actually I can just hit AA to show the intensity, and I can turn this up quite a bit. Now I'm going to go in and adjust the material options for these pieces, but you'll notice that it's overlighting the background. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this light, move it down here, and I'm going to set it as an adjustment light, and then hit AA again. I'm going to set the intensity to a negative number. So what this is going to do is sort of remove the light from the wall. However, this intense light here is going to keep affecting these shards or these individual pieces. So on these pieces, let's go in and select one of these, hit AA on the piece. This will show the material options, and let's adjust it just like this. So we want a very low diffuse and a very low metal value here. And we're going to turn the shininess way up. Basically, this will get sort of a bright kind of reflective look as these things angle themselves and hit the light and catch sort of reflections from the light, even though they're not really reflections, but they're sort of specular highlights that happen. So I'm going to select all these material options here, just select the material options for this one layer that I've set, hit select all, and paste. So it might take some finagling to get the camera where you want it to start and where you want it to end. I'm just going to do some minor adjustments here to kind of fix things up and get them exactly where I want them to be. So I'll select this keyframe here, hit Easy Ease, and I'm going to add a little bit of blur to this background wall. Just use a simple fast blur. Maybe about between 2 or 3. I'm also going to add a mask to it, just to mask out the center, so I can just have that center texture there, and then I'm going to hit the feather here and then feather this just in the Y direction, and we'll add a black solid behind everything. This time we'll actually make it black and drop that behind it. So we get kind of a darkened kind of version of the texture without having to add additional lights. Light intensity looks like it could come down just a little bit. Now to dress this up a little bit more, I'm going to go into Stylize and apply CC Glass to this. Now the default settings of CC Glass are a little bit kind of blobby, but if we set the softness and height to some pretty low values and then turn the displacement all the way down to something a little bit lower, let's render this full resolution, we can get some nice edge highlights on it, make it look a little bit more three-dimensional and a little bit better than your standard bevel. I can also set this to alpha instead of the luminance values to enhance the look just a little bit. So let's turn the displacement down. Now to give a little bit of a hint of extrusion to this, I'm going to duplicate this, and on the layer below it, let's take off that CC Glass, and we will go into the standard perspective bevel alpha here. Let's actually solo the one behind it. Let's give the edge thickness, set that to about 5, and then go into the position here. We'll push it away from the shatter text a little bit, just a couple pixels. I'm going to nudge this a little bit right, just by 1 or 2 pixels, just to give a little bit of darkness behind it. Alright, now we just need to dress it up with some adjustment layers. Let's add a standard adjustment layer, go to blur, add another, it's just a standard blur, 20 pixels, and set the blending mode to overlay. Turn the opacity down to about 50%. Also select repeat edge pixels so you don't see this sort of funny transparency thing going on right there. Just adds a little bit of punch and contrast. I'm going to label this. This is sort of a glow kind of effect. Another effect we could add in here that might help out just a little bit is a little bit of a vertical blur. So I'm adding another adjustment layer. Let's go into blur again, select fast blur, and add a vertical blur. Set the dimensions to vertical and set this to maybe about 30. Let the computer catch up, and let's set this to add. And also turn this way down. And that's really about it. Perhaps if you want to cool off the look of the background, we can color correct it. You could use a basic tritone effect and make it a little bit more blue, or stick with whatever color you've got. But I like kind of a blue effect on this. And I'm also going to add a little bit of this to this top shatter text layer. Again, not a lot. Maybe I'll set it to about 60% so it's blending it just a little bit. That pretty much does it for this tutorial. So I'm sure you can come up with some really innovative uses for this. Have some fun with it, and I hope you learned something. My name's Harry from Gray Machine. Thanks so much for watching.